Hey everyone, welcome back to all my listeners. This is episode number 1 of season 10. And guess what? This also starts up my 3rd year of podcasting. Today is Wednesday, September 6th, 2023. My name is Sonal Patel, and this is the Paint the Medical Picture podcast series. That's right, you heard me right. It's a brand new season to start a brand new month. And of course, this is my 3rd year of podcasting. Now, I hope everyone had a really, really nice long weekend to celebrate Labor Day, right? Celebrate yourselves for working so hard, doing what you love, and participating in society, right? So I know I had a really great long weekend holiday. I took off to the Big Apple, to New York City, to enjoy some really, really much needed quality time with my gal pals that I've had since childhood, right? But we all live all over the world. We lead busy, busy lives, and it's hard to spend really good quality time together. So we reunited in the Big Apple and did all sorts of things. Loved it all, but I've never been to the US Open. And so we went there on Monday. It was simply fantastic tennis watching in person, right? I sit at home year after year watching it on TV, but seeing it live on the courts, in the stadiums, watching the men play, watching the women play, phenomenal. If any of you love tennis as much as I do, you should definitely try and get some tickets one of these years because it is a great experience, a beautiful location in Flushing, fantastic. It was super hot this weekend, but regardless, it was great. Great food, great snacks, great drinks, and great friendships. It was phenomenal. So I hope all of you found some time over the long weekend to do something special, and just to unwind and do a bunch of nothing as well. That's also very good to do on Labor Day, right? To celebrate all of the labor that you do all year round, right? But for the long weekend, it's simply okay to do nothing and celebrate. So anyways, you guys, let's get into today. Now, it is the first Wednesday of a brand new month, and I know I've been missing my Newsworthy Grab Bag sessions from a while back. So I want to bring it back today. Today's grab bag is going to hold updates on the top 10 drugs selected by Medicare for price negotiations. The second grab bag is going to feature the new modifier 27 that's been created. And finally, the very, very newsworthy fact that the month of September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month and how we can help raise awareness. How can we all do a better job spotting the signs someone is unhappy and in a dangerous spot? And of course, I'll write you guys in my compliance tips and my compliance recommendations. I wanted to also go back to another creation of mine, Back to Basics, that I started way back in season 4. So let's go back and refocus on something that I see still today in the work I perform. Let's refocus on signature requirements. And I'll go ahead and close out today's episode for season 10 with a new topic, right? A new focus. It's going to be on perseverance. So that remarkable quote on perseverance is going to come from Nelson Mandela. If you guys have checked me out on LinkedIn, you know I'm all about compliance and protecting our physicians and our valued healthcare professionals when it comes to the business of medicine. I hope this week with me brings you enough to take back to your organizations, want to dive in deeper, to use my tips and best practices to ensure success. I hope this podcast will help you boost the quality of documentation capture and improve your coding accuracy as you help all your providers paint the medical picture. If you like what you're hearing, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss another episode. Please write in a review and kindly drop me a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, and definitely start following this podcast on Spotify as well. I'd really love to see your continued support on Spotify as well. Now, as always, you guys, a friendly disclaimer. Remember, I'm bringing you the news, current healthcare industry news, my compliance tips and my compliance recommendations based on my over 13 years of experience in front office, in back end, in coding, and in billing for multi-specialty physicians, in compliance, and in auditing for both E&M and surgical operative reports. These are my opinions alone and are not to be construed as legal advice. So let's get into today's Newsworthy Grab Bag feature. The first grab bag item focuses on the August 29th, 2023 HHS announcement of the top 10 drugs that have been selected for Medicare's price negotiations, pursuant to the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. Now, this new law provides meaningful financial relief for millions of people with Medicare by improving access to affordable treatments while simultaneously strengthening the Medicare program. For the first time, the law provides Medicare the ability to directly negotiate the prices of certain high expenditure, single source drugs without generic or biosimilar competition. This is the list of 10 drugs covered under Medicare Part D, selected for negotiation for the initial price applicability year, 2026, based on total gross covered prescription drug costs under Medicare Part D and other criteria as required by the law. Now, these 10 drugs are, number 1, Eliquis, and that treats blood clots. The second drug on the list is for Jardiance, which treats diabetes and even heart failure. The third drug on the list is for Xarelto, which treats blood clots, PAD, or CAD. The fourth drug on the list is Januvia, which treats diabetes. The fifth is called Farxiga, and that treats diabetes, heart failure, and even CKD. The sixth drug on the list is for Entresto, which treats heart failure. The seventh drug on the list is called Enbrel, and it treats RA, psoriasis, and psoriatic arthritis. The eighth drug on the list is called Imbruvica, and it treats blood cancers. The ninth drug on the list is called Stelara, and it treats psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, Crohn's disease, and even ulcerative colitis. And finally, the 10th drug on the list is called Fiasp or Novolog, and it treats diabetes. Moving on. Now, the second Newsworthy Grab Bag features a brand new place of service, a POS code, that's been created for healthcare professionals providing preventive or screening or diagnostic and or treatment services to unsheltered homeless individuals in a non-permanent location on the street or in a found environment. Now, this place of service, POS 27, is for outreach site or street, and it's effective on claims starting October 1st, 2023. Now, as an entity covered under the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996, also called HIPAA, Medicare must comply with standards and their implementation guides adopted by regulation under this statute. The currently adopted Professional Implementation Guide for the ASC X12 837 standards requires that each electronic claim transaction include a POS code from the POS code set that is maintained by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. That's our CMS. Now, as a payer, Medicare must be able to recognize any code from the POS code set that appears on the HIPAA standard claim transaction. This new code was requested and ultimately created at the request of industry entities. It addresses a need for a code which helps identify care rendered to those who may be unable to access brick and mortar settings, as well as to potentially allow for the tracking of care provided through outreach sites. Now, Medicare has not identified a need for this new code. However, in order to comply with HIPAA and its goals of promoting administrative simplification, contractors are to accept these claims containing the new POS code 27 in accordance with its effective date. Again, that's October 1st, 2023. Medicare contractors shall therefore implement the systems and or local contractor level changes needed for Medicare to return these claims as unprocessable with the new code of POS 27 should it appear on a Medicare claim. And finally, the third Newsworthy Grab Bag item features the fact that the month of September is dedicated to suicide prevention awareness. Now, suicide is a major public health concern. In 2020, suicide was the 12th leading cause of death overall in the United States, claiming the lives of over 45,900 people. Suicide is complicated and tragic, but it's often preventable. Knowing the warning signs for suicide and how to get help can help save lives. Now, the NIH has written up a really wonderful fact sheet on numerous things that I'm outlining for all of you here today. Suicide is when people harm themselves with the intent of ending their life, and they die as a result. A suicide attempt is when people harm themselves with the intent of ending their life, but they do not die. Avoid using terms such as committing suicide, successful suicide, or failed suicide when referring to suicide and suicide attempts, as these are terms that often carry negative meanings. So, what are some warning signs to look out for? Warning signs that someone may be at immediate risk for attempting suicide include talking about wanting to die or wanting to kill themselves, talking about feeling empty or hopeless or having no reason to live, talking about feeling trapped or feeling that there are no solutions, feeling unbearable emotional or physical pain, talking about being a burden to others, withdrawing from family and friends, giving away important possessions, saying goodbye to friends and family, putting affairs in order, such as making a will, taking great risks that could lead to death, such as driving extremely fast, talking or thinking about death often. Now, some other serious warning signs that someone may be at risk for attempting suicide include if they're displaying extreme mood swings, suddenly changing from very sad to very calm or very happy, making a plan or looking for ways to kill themselves, such as searching for lethal methods online, stockpiling pills, or even buying a gun, talking about feeling great guilt or great shame, using alcohol or drugs more often, acting anxious or agitated, changing eating or sleeping habits, showing rage or talking about seeking revenge. Now, suicide is not a normal response to stress. Suicidal thoughts or actions are a sign of extreme distress and should not be ignored. If these warning signs apply to you or someone you know, get help as soon as possible, particularly if the behavior is new or has increased recently. Here are just 5 simple steps you can take immediately to help someone in distress. Number 1, ask. Number 2, keep them safe. Number 3, be there. Number 4, help them connect. And finally, number 5, stay connected. So the NIH goes over more about ask. So ask elaborates. Are you thinking about killing yourself? It's not an easy question, but studies show that asking at-risk individuals if they are suicidal does not increase suicides or suicidal thoughts. The NIH also elaborates on keep them safe. So it says, reducing a suicidal person's access to highly lethal items or places is an important part of suicide prevention. While this is not always easy, asking if the at-risk person has a plan and removing or disabling the lethal means can make a difference. Be there, the NIH elaborates. Listen carefully and learn what the individual is thinking and feeling. Research suggests that acknowledging and talking about suicide may reduce rather than increase suicidal thoughts. And then the NIH elaborates on help them connect. You should be saving the 988 suicide and crisis lifeline number. Call or text 988 anytime by using your cell phone, so they're there if you need them. You can also help make a connection with a trusted individual like a family member, a friend, a spiritual advisor, or mental health professional. And finally, the NIH elaborates on stay connected. Staying in touch after a crisis or after being discharged from healthcare, mental health care, can make a difference. Studies have shown the number of suicide deaths goes down when someone follows up with the at-risk person. Now, what are some risk factors for suicide? People of all genders, all ages, and all ethnicities can be at risk. Suicidal behavior is complex and there is no single cause. The main risk factors for suicide include things like depression, other mental disorders, or substance use disorder, chronic pain, personal history of suicide attempts, family history of a mental disorder or substance abuse, family history of suicide, exposure to family violence, including physical or sexual abuse, the presence of guns or other firearms in the home, having recently been released from prison or jail. For people with suicidal thoughts, exposure, either directly or indirectly, to others' suicidal behavior, such as that of a family member or a peer or celebrities, can also be a risk factor. Now, most people who have risk factors will not attempt suicide, and it is difficult to tell who will act on suicidal thoughts. So, although risk factors for suicide are important to keep in mind, someone who's actively showing warning signs of suicide may be at higher risk for danger and in need of immediate attention. Now, stressful life events, such as the loss of a loved one, legal troubles, or financial difficulties, as well as interpersonal stressors, such as shame, harassment, bullying, discrimination, or relationship troubles, may contribute to suicide risk, especially when they occur along with suicide risk factors. Family and friends are often the first to recognize the warning signs of suicide, and they can take the first step toward helping a loved one find mental health treatment. And now it's time for my best practice tips in Trusty Tip. So, in today's compliance tip, let's get back to basics, that fun little bite-sized series that I created way back in season 4. Let's get back to basics on signature requirements. There are still a lot of notes not being properly signed or signed at all after the encounter is complete, not even after the notes have been input into the EMR. Now, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, their guidelines mandate that the presence of signatures for medical review purposes are documented. However, records pertaining to any procedures billed to Medicare are potentially subject to review by not only one particular MAC or CMS contractor, they could be reviewed by any number of CMS contractors. Now let's go over some major signature requirements, and these are pretty important to keep in mind. Medicare requires that services provided or ordered be authenticated by the author. That means the signature for each entry must be legible and should include the practitioner's first and last name. And then for clarification purposes, even further, it's recommended that you include your applicable credentials, like if you're a physician assistant, or if you're a doctor of osteopathy, or if you're an MD, right? Always put that comma with your credential after your first and last name in your signature. Now, the purpose of a rendering, treating, or ordering practitioner's signature in patients' medical records, operative reports, orders, test findings, etc., is to demonstrate that services submitted to Medicare have been accurately and fully documented, reviewed, and authenticated. Also, it confirms that the provider has certified the medical necessity and reasonableness for the services submitted to the Medicare program for payment consideration. So all of those factors are the underlying rationale of the ever important signature capture. Now, acceptable methods of signing records, test orders, and findings include number 1, handwritten. Those are still acceptable, but they need to be legible. So be mindful of that. There's also the acceptable method of electronic. And then our electronic signatures usually contain a date and a timestamp, right? And those include printed statements, like, for example, electronically signed by or verified and reviewed by, followed by the practitioner's name, and preferably a professional designation, right? So that credential is important, that comma, PA, comma, MD. Now note that the responsibility and the authorship that's related to the signature should be clearly defined in the record. And of course, our digital signatures are an electronic method of a written signature that's typically generated by special encrypted software that allows for one person's usage. And finally, I focus Season 10 Spark on perseverance. I want this 10th season Spark to be filled with our world's thought leaders, writers, artists, philosophers, everyone who inspires the need for perseverance in all we strive to do. So, in this week's inspiring quote in Spark is from Nelson Mandela. It always seems impossible until it's done. Absolutely true, right? I think this is an amazing quote that reminds us that we do only think something is not attainable, that it's simply too far from our reach, when in fact, there's so much that we've already done to accomplish bit by bit to help get things done. I think this quote reminds us that we have to keep going. We have to persist, not just give up. This quote inspires us to believe we really can do anything. I'm happy Nelson Mandela's spark burns brightly in all of us today. So that wraps up today's episode. And as always, I appreciate you guys diving into today with me. If you want more information from me, please go ahead and follow me on LinkedIn. I'll leave links to everything in the show notes below. All right, you guys, so on my final note today, let's keep raising awareness for Suicide Prevention Month. Remember to reach out a helping hand, an ear or two, and really be present. Really listen to someone in trouble. And of course, keep carving out that time for yourselves each and every day. I've included the link in my show notes for that spotlight feature on the NIH, right? All of that wonderful information was provided by the NIH on suicide prevention. So be sure to bookmark it, share it with everybody that you love. It's publicly available, and I provided the link in my show notes. So anyways, you guys, I'm wishing you guys all an amazing, happy week ahead and a wonderful month of September, right? Fall is just around the corner, and you know me, it's my favorite season, so I can't wait until fall hits the calendar. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening in on today's episode, and I hope every week with me brings you closer to helping your providers paint a masterpiece. See you next Wednesday.